Okay, so we're going to carry on writing this essay. I'm just going to sort of talk you through what I'm thinking, so hopefully that'll be a bit more helpful. So the stuff that we've done here on audiences is fine. So we need to do a little bit on representation. Now we don't need to do tons here because it's not a representation question, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Okay, so these sentences here that I've put on this Perth's writing frame, you don't have to use them all. Like maybe just kind of one or two, depending on how much you need to say. So I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to say the representation of Zoella and Alfie, as a couple is interesting here because this is what they are wanting. Okay, so we're going to get rid of all the rest of that. So the representation of Zoella and Alfie as a couple is interesting here because this is what they are wanting the audience to focus on. And if you remember, this essay is talking all about the kind of everyday mise-en-scène, so that's what we need to kind of bring it back to. So the everyday mise-en-scène helps to represent the couple as being ordinary and one of us, which positions the audience. I know I'm going back to audience, but that's because it's an audience question, isn't it? So we've got to keep kind of referencing that. So the everyday mise-en-scène helps to represent the couple as being ordinary and one of us, which positions the audience to continue to feel a strong connection with them as a couple, and therefore strengthens the personal relationship we feel with them. Okay, and we've got personal relationship in capitals because we are directly referencing uses and gratifications theory. Okay, so this is the bit now where we want to bring in our theory. So you want to get your theory cards out to just make sure that you're using the right terminology. So we're talking about that kind of everyday mise-en-scène. So let's have a think. Okay, so I'm going to use Shirky's end of audience, which is obviously all about the audience kind of connecting and creating their own text in response, not being passive. And I'm going to say that the everyday mise-en-scène kind of makes them feel like they can talk directly to Zoella because they feel like she's kind of one of them. I'm really sorry, I'm making this at break and it's really loud outside my office, so I hope you can hear what I'm saying. So this is how I'm going to write this. Shirky would suggest, in fact let's edit that. So let me, Shirky would potentially, because we don't know, we're not sat with him, would potentially suggest, I'm going to now just embed which theory it was, through his end of audience theory, that the everyday mise-en-scène allows the audience to feel close enough to Zoella to connect with her by responding and commenting on her picture, because they feel like she is someone who is, I'm going to say normal, I kind of mean ordinary, so I think I'll say ordinary as well, normal or ordinary enough to be someone they could converse with, just as they would with a so because this is component 2, it's not enough for us to just apply one theory. We've got to either challenge it or support it. So let's have a think. What about if we use cultivation theory? So if we think about using, I'm just going to root through and get my cards out, which you will do as well when you're sat writing your own essays. Okay, so it's a green one because it's a representation theory. So it's the idea that the media provides us with tools that we use to construct our own identities. So if we're thinking about this everyday mise-en-scène, you could argue that that helps us to construct our own identity. That helps us to feel like we are somebody like Zoella is. That's a really clunky way of expressing it. Let's see if I can type it any better. So it's going to be a supportive one. So this view would also be possibly held by Gauntlet in his theories of, oops, need capital, in his theories of identity. Let's get rid of this. So, how can we say it? So, this view would possibly be held by Gauntlet in his theories of identity because Zoella is confident and happy in her normal environment. Right, so Zoella's confident and happy in her normal environment. I'm just going to kind of make it really clear what I'm talking about now, as expressed by the everyday mise-en-scène. And, not we, and audiences may feel, let's change that to really reference this idea of identity. So an audience's identity may be shaped into believing that they have a kind of relationship with her. This sense of identity would potentially lead them to go on to respond via a comment, thus creating their own text. As described by both Jenkins and Shirky. Okay, so you can see how we've kind of got a ton of theory in there and it's all sort of supporting each other. So we've got Gauntlet's theories of identity and then kind of referencing fandom, that idea that audiences create their own text. I know that their own text in this case is just a comment, but that is a text in its own right. You know, it's there, it's on the internet, it's potentially there in perpetuity, you know, it could be there forever. So it is a text in its own right. And of course Shirky, who we've already talked about, this idea of an audience not being passive anymore. Okay, so that's how we do our theory. And there's enough in there where you're bouncing theories off one another for you to get the marks there for evaluation. Okay, so here, I don't know exactly which year this was from, this picture of Zoella at the wedding. I'm just having a look. No, it's not clear. So we're gonna just hedge it a little bit. So we're gonna say in modern Britain, rather than just saying this representation, so the representation that Zoella creates of herself as a normal girl just going to kind of speech mark that to sort of say that it's not necessarily my belief, it's just what I would suggest that she represents herself as. Let's have a look. So in modern Britain, the representation that Zoella creates of herself as a normal girl may have been, we don't want to say that, may have been more acceptable or typical. Let's get rid of that. So in modern Britain, the representation that Zoella creates of herself as a normal girl is likely, we're going to try and bring it back maybe to the question a little bit, because this modern Britain thing is probably not as relevant as it would be if this was an older text, like Tide, for example. So in modern Britain, the representation that Zoella creates of herself as a normal girl is likely to generate interest from other young women with similar ages, with similar interests and ideologies. Okay, so just a very brief reference. We don't need to say loads there because it's a modern context, so it's kind of less important than the old texts like Tide or Vogue, for example. Right, so we're going to bring it all back now. We're going to reuse words from our point, which was this. So I'm going to just copy this down here just so we can kind of remember what we actually said to start with. So through this example, it is evident that aspects of identity, okay, right, we can actually put all of that there. Let's have a look now how that looks. Through this example, it is evident that aspects of identity are incredibly important in terms of the way that audiences both choose and respond to online media. Okay, so that is actually a really strong paragraph now. So hopefully that will make sense to you guys how I've kind of carried on writing that paragraph that we started together.